While the James Webb Telescope uses its infrared vision to explore the distant and ancient insights of the universe, we must not forget that some of the greatest cosmic mysteries are right at our doorstep. Although you might think that the moon has been fully decoded by now, in reality, our constant companion still holds many unsolved mysteries. In fact, we cannot even say with absolute certainty how our satellite was formed in the first place. But that's not all. Measurements of the gravity field have revealed that a gigantic structure lies dormant beneath the surface of the moon's mysterious far side. This discovery often fuels speculation and wild theories. But do we really have to deal with the hidden base of a true lunar civilization? Or can the existence of this lunar colossus be explained differently? Where terrestrial vision is limited, myths and legends provide adventurous explanations because, fundamentally, we have always tried to break through the unknown. It is simply incomprehensible for us to perceive the mysterious far side of the moon from Earth. The reason is simple. Our natural satellite has a fixed revolution. It always presents the same face to the Earth. But why is this so? In this regard, specialists emphasize that our satellite only acquired this characteristic gradually, soon after its formation. The moon actually rotated much faster in the past. Over time, Earth's gravitational pull slowed it down to the point that its rotational speed eventually matched its orbital speed. Because of this, it is obvious that for thousands of years, humans could only speculate about what was on the far side of the moon. But as we all know, today we have somewhat different means to explore what is called the far side of the moon. However, we knew long before the Chang'e 4 mission, which became the first spacecraft to land on the far side of the moon in January 2019, that the far side of the moon isn't as solemn as often claimed. In fact, the far side of the moon is virtually identical to the near side, just in reverse order. If we look closely, we can even see that the far side of the moon, or at least the darkest side, the region facing away from Earth, actually has a higher reflectivity than the near side. Every time the moon appears in the sky as a faint crescent, its far side is brighter than the front. At full moon, the term far side refers less to the fact that the far side of the moon receives less sunlight than the near side, and more to the idea that for our ancestors, it long symbolized the great unknown. But despite all the lunar parallels, it is indisputable that the two halves of the moon could not be more different in other ways. In fact, we only learned this since 1959, when the Soviet spacecraft Luna 3 sent the first images of the previously invisible region to Earth. At that time, like today, a quick glance was enough to notice that the dark Maria, lunar plains, covered with solidified lava represented only a small percentage of the surface, compared to the side facing the Earth. The extent of the Maria is about 1/4 of the total surface, and the mountains and lunar rills are far less numerous on the far side. Specialists believe they have finally solved the mystery of the difference between the two sides of the moon, but we'll discuss that later. For now, we need to focus on another equally fascinating discovery. Measurements of the gravity field have unexpectedly revealed that the far side of the moon harbors a gigantic structure, a huge puzzle for astronomers. This mysterious giant structure, which has been compared to the island of Hawaii, extends over an area larger than 10,400 square kilometers and bears the same name as the state. Anyone who visits Hawaii's main island can not only enjoy the many black sand beaches, but also the view of the imposing volcanoes Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. But what is the connection between this vacation paradise in the Pacific and a spectacular discovery on the far side of the moon? Well, it's quite simple. Peter B. James from Baylor University in Texas could be cited as saying, a metal mass, several times larger than the main island of Hawaii, is buried deep underground. This is about the unexpected mass we discovered, but how did we arrive at this? And what does it mean? To understand this, we must first examine the size of the said mass. It's no ordinary place on the moon's surface, but rather the South Pole Aitken Basin, which is none other than the largest preserved impact crater in the solar system. It spans over 2,000 kilometers, but most of it remains largely unknown, especially the details of the catastrophic impact that is believed to have occurred 4.3 billion years ago and the resulting consequences for the young moon. To shed light on the lunar darkness and discover what lies beneath the surface of the South Pole Aitken Basin, James' team examined data from the Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory Grail mission. As part of this mission, Two spacecraft were sent to the Moon in September 2011 to measure the gravitational field and its irregularities, thus gaining insight into the Moon's internal structure. The scientists combined data from GRAIL with that from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which is dedicated to mapping the entire lunar surface in high resolution and measuring cosmic radiation exposure. As mentioned, the researchers' investigation finally revealed the existence of a gigantic mass anomaly hundreds of kilometers beneath the South Pole Lake basin. And this is truly a mass anomaly. In fact, it reaches a depth of 200 kilometers and contains 2.18 quadrillion tons. To put this into perspective, this is about half the mass of Earth's entire atmosphere. But the internet wouldn't be the internet if it didn't search for natural explanations for this. In the context of an alternative theory, where we've never been to the Moon, and where it could even be an artificial space station disguised as a celestial body, the idea of a hidden underground base for Moon inhabitants doesn't seem as far-fetched. Even so, even the more conservative researchers still can't state with absolute certainty the true reason behind this mass anomaly. However, without surprise, their theories are not based on the existence of an unknown lunar civilization but rather on the metallic core of the asteroid that created the South Pole Lake basin billions of years ago. It is believed that this asteroid's core could be buried deep within the lunar mantle. Computer simulations suggest that such an iron-nickel core could deeply penetrate the upper mantle during the impact, with the immense weight of the asteroid's core pulling the crust of the crater downward by an additional kilometer. Another approach to explaining the mass anomaly posits that it is the result of a huge mass of thick oxide that accumulated at the Moon's south pole when the original magma ocean cooled and solidified. However, only time will tell which of these two hypotheses is closer to the truth. It is possible that the mystery of the underground structure could be resolved during a manned lunar mission. Why does the Moon have two faces? The catastrophic impact at the south pole of the Moon could not only have left behind a puzzling mass anomaly, but could also explain the drastic differences between the two halves of the Moon. In addition to the tidal imbalance mentioned earlier, researchers have now also discovered that the crust on the far side of the Moon is significantly thicker than on the near side. At the same time, the near side's crust is unusually rich in thorium, radioactive potassium, phosphorus, and rare earth elements. The way this peculiar territory formed and what triggered the lunar surface volcanism remains unclear and controversial. Some researchers suspect that the causes of the crustal differences lie in Earth's tidal forces, while others believe it is more likely that these differences are the result of a devastating impact. Matt Jones from Brown University is one of them, and that is why he and his colleagues have focused on examining what impact the enormous heat from the South Pole Lake basin's impact could have had on the entire celestial body. The geophysics of the primitive lunar interior has shown that the impact could indeed have caused a thermal anomaly in the lunar mantle, which significantly influenced the development of the Moon's interior for hundreds of millions of years. In detail, the encounter with the 100 kilometers asteroid triggered an intense heat surge that spread into the interior of the Moon, reaching the opposite side, ultimately affecting the area known today for its many tides and the landscape of craters. During this process, gatherings of titanium-rich magma were also carried towards the surface of the Moon, promoted like a surfer following a wave. According to the reenactment, the heat and convection of the mantle that followed would have been enough to explain the particular enrichment of the CRIP territory and the basaltic rock of the Maria. However, the impact at the south pole of the Moon could have even paved the way for volcanism and the development of the Maria. In fact, the event could also have concentrated heat-generating elements on the near side of the Moon, and the interaction between radioactive heating and the increase in mantle convection could have literally fueled the upper mantle of the near side for hundreds of millions of years. Conversely, the hot magma could then have erupted onto the surface in the form of huge volcanic eruptions. According to specialists, the first eruptions occurred about 200 million years after the asteroid impact, while the most extreme phase of tidal volcanism began between 300 and 500 million years later. In other words, it is increasingly clear that the South Pole Basin and the nature of the front face of the Moon are directly linked, and one of the greatest mysteries of lunar research has finally been solved. Now, it's up to you to solve the next riddle. What is directly beneath our video and that you will quote above? Be careful. Quote it, like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new videos. See you soon.